practical tool to encourage economic growth in Japan. This corporate family structure acted as a productive unit or machine. The father works a white-collar job, the mother tends to the family members, and the educational-minded children are fixated on achieving academic goals. Architectural typologies that were a direct result of this propaganda included the NLDK family house, N being the number of bedrooms, which in plan can be seen as typically segregated with a distinct function assigned to each domestic space. Looking at the film Shoplifters, the topic of kinship fluidity starts to surface as direct blood relations between STEM family members decrease in significance, and spontaneous adoption of strangers become an option to construct their own choice of chosen family. The characters collectively seek refuge under the convenient label of family in order to pool together their resources and labor to lessen their individual financial burdens. The flexibility in family structure is reflected in the spaces that they live in, which resembles the Minka typology, where there is a large tatami room with interchangeable furniture that can be rearranged according to their needs and time of day. With less partition walls and more shared areas of living, the disregard for the once sacred nuclear family values is evident. Building on the idea of being able to choose one's own family, two films that explore rental family as a phenomenon that emerged to deal with one's own psychological void is Noriko's Dinner Table and Rent a Family, Inc. The entire scripted industry of rental family is built upon the exchange of temporary, superficial relationships with money as a commodity. Employees rent themselves out by hourly charge to role-play the given scenarios dictated by clients who hire them. This involves employees acting out personalities and roles when showing up at the scheduled meeting with the client, whereby both parties attend and then pretend to be family despite knowing well the reality behind the scenes. This service tends to be a recurring commitment, especially for clients who are seeking a familiar companionship, be it to cope with the departure of a family member or extreme isolation and lonely living. The same service could also be deployed as a tool to upkeep social appearances for clients when attending highly regarded events in Japan, such as wedding ceremonies. The employees who work for the service, however, are able to build genuine relationships with their colleagues outside of work, since most rental family companies provide dormitories for them to live in together. Though the spaces that they reside in may be extremely regimented, the opportunity to reassemble their own relationships away from the constraints of the cookie-cutter family notions offers them an escape mechanism. Ironically, though the lifestyle that they lead may be a complete subversion from the canonical pathway, they are still upholding the perpetuation of this nuclear family ideal through their work, since it is virtually impossible to eliminate it from history. My project, The Inauspicious House, is a material manifestation of this paradox between kinship structure and familial values in the form of a rental family service staging house and a dormitory for 80 employees to reside in. Located in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, an hour's journey by train brings us to the heart of Tokyo from the site. This allows for convenient access to the rental family service clients who may come from the lonely living of major cities. The surrounding context has a mix of various housing densities. The site was chosen because a believable residential neighborhood environment has to be facilitated for the front of house of the project to blend into. The front of house of the project during the opening hours of the rental family service hub is built to be a theatrical shopfront, where clients can choose one of several traditional family home typologies, shown here as the NLDK family home, one-room apartments, minka, kitchen, or tea house to role-play their ideal scenarios in. This allows for the clients to pick and choose how and what environment they want their desires to be fulfilled in, tailoring the service to exactly what they lack. These typologies respect the auspicious arrangements that are sacred to the design of Japanese homes. For example, pay attention to the tatami mat layouts used here. These purely scenic backyards to the front of house, which provide more stages for the rental family service to be performed in, also follow a set of age-old rules to promenade garden design, again to build up a true-to-reality simulation for the client's experience. Oh, sorry. The stepping stones in the garden lead to a raised veranda called an engawa, which to the clients seem like an extension of their backyard garden, but in fact simultaneously conceals the back of house dormitory where the employees live. In contrast to the other side, the inauspicious tatami mat layout seen here follows a strict compositional rationality, and the arrangement itself symbolizes death in Japanese culture. The open field condition references the Minka philosophy from before, whereby furniture can be used to rearrange the functionality, seen here in the form of sliding doors or fusuma, which can be slotted in along the tracks to provide privacy when needed. Lastly, hyper-rationalizing the furniture and services in the dormitory establishes a generic template that can open up ways for unforeseen use, seen here as the individualized lockers, a collectivized kitchen, an open vanity space, and a bathhouse style or sento style showers in the back. The degree of publicness and lack of segregation for this activity presents a strong juxtaposition to the sacred ritual of bathing together as a close-knit family, which is typically what you would see in Japanese culture. A slightly uncanny factor that would not be experienced at the inhabitation level is the fact that the entire project snaps into this grid, including intentionally squeezing all the nuclear family homes and gardens into a perfectly square site. This was done to establish an overall cohesion running throughout the project and to rationalize the dimensions of the furniture and services used in the back of house. There is a single layer of shoji, or paper sliding door facade, that wraps around the entire perimeter of the back of house, adopting a traditional aesthetic and material. This decision was made to hide the very taboo rental family service concealed behind it when seen from the exterior as well as the front of house, like in this scene. Furthermore, recurring use of familiar Japanese architectural elements in the back of house design, such as the tatami, shoji, and fusuma, mirrors what the employees are doing through their jobs of role-playing these constructed familial roles as pictured in this scene. They act as a point of reference to the canonical family ideal for the employees to hold on to, while simultaneously offering them the freedom to explore new forms of lifestyles, kin relations, and personalities away from the imposition of the nuclear family dream. This is especially prominent through the physical misappropriation of aforementioned sacred elements in the back of house design. For example, the tatami sizes used here actually subvert from the production size, but keeps the 2:1 aspect ratio, snapping to the invisible grid, and is arranged in a manner considered inauspicious in the culture, unlike those present in the front of house. The open field condition also sets a clean slate for the employees to reassemble their self-constructed relationships, just like how they can reassemble their domestic space with sliding doors and movable furniture. The time where the front and back of house threshold is completely blurred is during the off hours of work, whereby the employees could even take over and occupy the shopfront area, misusing its features such as opening up all the sliding doors to create a long and functional garden instead of a purely aesthetic one, disregarding the sacred notions and profaning it with their daily activities, which in turn births new opportunities for reinvention of the given space. This ambivalent transition flattens the hierarchy, which separates the front and back of house during the opening hours entirely. Finally, the roof structure at the back of house, supported by thin circular columns in the field, features an undulation pattern on the underside of the ceiling, both of which are made of highly reflective metallic material. The entire roof slab also mirrors this materiality in order to camouflage it within the neighborhood when viewed from the exterior. The closer together the undulation on the ceiling is, the more distorted the reflection would be, and vice versa. This is used to suggest levels of intimacy within the back of house. For example, closer to the boundary, the reflection is smooth, where areas of sleeping might occur, the undulation is much denser together, so the reflection is more distorted, providing a better sense of privacy for the inhabitants. As a result, the inauspicious house is a response to encourage new radical forms of fluid kin relations to form for the employees. At the same time, the project acknowledges the ingrained nuclear family values in Japanese society is slow to dissolve. The project stands as a compromise between the two, facilitating modes of life and opportunities for reinvention and misuse in the back of house, which represent a new sacred to the employees, while offering a sense of familiarity through the subtle references to the old profane. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cheryl.
Thank you, James, for having me here.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to be reminded how amazing the project was.
Thanks.
And
should I stop somewhere while we...
I don't know. I mean, we can stop at your favorite image.
Okay. Let's put this one for now.
Okay. I don't know. Like, does anyone have anything to add, or discuss?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. It was really, yeah, inspiring and amazing.
Thank you.
I just have a question. I might just missed it, but is there a reason why you chose like Japanese culture and Japanese like family kind of film that you started from? That is there a reason why you picked up Japan and I think you picked a side as Japan because you started from that idea or something, or but I'm just curious what's the reason why you picked Japan and Japanese culture and movie. Yeah.
So for the project, we all started with like going through a lot of different types of groups of people that we found like interesting and fits kind of the brief. And I happened to land on like rental family as one of them. And it's kind of most prominent in Japan. And as a result, more films and documentaries are made in the context of Japan, which is kind of how I started it. But I also personally had an interest in it anyway. And then in combination with like the other tutor, which was Brendan's, like he gave a lot of the film recommendations. So that's why it stemmed from there. And then it made sense to have the site in Japan as well, because that's where the service is most commonly found. Yeah, but then I also know it exists in other cultures, but maybe not necessarily like there's also like Rent a Girlfriend and so on, I think, and also Korea. So yeah.
Interesting. And another about building up the logic and how you get at the information or stuff. Other than what you mentioned in the presentation, I'm just curious about the journey that you took to build up the logic and be really believe in what you are presenting. I mean, I'm not presenting, but like the initial initiative and the logic is really the hard part of the project, I think. And I'm just want to hear more about the journey that you had.
Well, because I obviously didn't actually go to Japan to do it. So a lot of the research was purely through like film work, which I had enjoyed anyway. So it was a matter of kind of going through a lot of the films in detail and stopping at the stills to try and get a picture of what the house would look like, and then reconstructing it in plan. So especially for this one, which was the Shoplifters film, I have no idea what like the house would actually look like because they didn't give details of the filming site or anything. So it was like going through I think here like all these stills and trying to extract what the spatial qualities are from like the design set, and then also doing some research about traditionally in the past like what these kinds of typologies would be like. So that was kind of the main chunk of my research, as well as some reading which was provided by the unit brief. So that was the research part of it. And then the design logic came from testing iterations. So that's this page. So it literally started with like compositional testing of like tatami mats. And I knew that that was something that an element that I already wanted to preserve because it's very core to Japanese culture. So just doing compositional tests and then we also did a fun exercise where we named all of them. And then this resulted in coming to this logic where it's just arrayed in a very rational manner. And then I found out that this is actually what in Japanese culture they would tend to avoid, because it's what they use for funerals instead. And I think playing on this, like the tension between using this in the design to represent the death of like the nuclear family, was a good way to move forward, which is why we decided to go with this one instead.
Thank you. That's really interesting.
Thank you for your question.
Do you have anyone else? I mean, maybe I can ask a question. I mean,
No, no. Why?
I mean, now looking back, you know, we see more and more people not really binded by the, you know, typologies, even the very traditional ones, and you know, they don't necessarily live in family forms. So like we do witness like a lot of instances with this kind of typological profanation through these people. So where does your project, do you think, that comes really critical, or you know, proposing something like alternative? There are agents who are already kind of, you know, doing this.
Well, I think the proposal is an alternative, but only in the back of house, right? Because the front of house is kind of what you're saying. During the off hours of work, the employees are still able to kind of profane these very sacred typologies. So I think maybe it's like a balance of the two. And yeah, it's not like either or.
Yeah. I mean, what I really appreciated was actually the, you know, the scale that's much more unfamiliar. Like much bigger scale, like collective forms are definitely less encouraged, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I think what was so great about this project was that you've kind of extracted from the like existing movement that's very typal, but then you've kind of converted it into bigger opportunities to amplify this like collectiveness. So yeah, I mean, I thought that was really fantastic. It's still great to see the project. That's
Thanks, James. I hope
yeah,
it ages well.
yeah, I hope so too. But yeah. Usually, I mean, when I look at my portfolio, for example, like, it's aged pretty terribly. So
I'm
let's
sure.
not get huge like high.
Sure, it's fine.
No, I thought it's really great. Anyone else before we move on to the next video? And yeah, okay. Well, Cheryl, thank you so much again for having your time, and
Yes.
you know, I know it's very difficult to make time during the working hours to present.
It's
So
okay. That's the benefit of, work from home. So don't tell my boss.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having me, everyone. I'll take you
Bye.
later, James. Bye.
Take care. Thank you. Bye. Okay. I mean, we're earlier than what's been kind of scheduled internally. But maybe we can move on to the next student if let's see, Junsung is here. Junsung, are you there?
Hi.
Hey, Junsung. It's good to see you again. So actually, it all happens to be like second year projects that they're presenting today. So yeah, Junsung was actually one of most recent student from the AA Experimental 6. Just completed the second year, moving on to the third year next year. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Junsung.
No problem.
I'm sure you're already sick and tired of like talking to me for the entire year, and then now this again. It's never ending, is it? Okay.
It's nice. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if I've missed anything from the intro, would you like to give a brief intro of yourself before you start the presentation?
I'm Korean. I'm living in Seoul, and especially I have a project, something really related to Seoul's typology. Yeah, that's it.
Jin-san, do you mind speaking up a bit more or putting the microphone closer to?
Oh, sure. How is
Yeah.
sound now? Okay.
This is much better. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, over to you. Whenever you're ready.
Mm-hmm. Can you see the screen?
Yep, we can.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Junsung Kim, just finished undergraduate second year in AA, and I represent my project, Cafe Soul. So, sorry. Okay. Which proposes a giant staircase as a cafe on one of Seoul's mountain, but it's ultimately providing this landscape of stages and platforms for people of Seoul to use in different ways. So the project began from my initial interest about cafe. As many of you already know, there are insanely diverse cafes in Seoul, such as chain cafes, 24 hours cafes, fishing cafes, VR cafes, co-working cafes, etc. And this phenomenon always gave me a question that, are they really just a coffee drinking space or something else? Because the cafe was originally defined as a coffee drinking space, but now it's clear that they can embrace any subject and activity, also authorize the space to take any shape or form in Seoul. The research started from the myth of coffee. The coffee was invented as drink for mankind by a shepherd who discovered behavioral changes in his goats after they ate coffee beans. As this energy supplement globalized, the legend spread telling the story of Omar, who cured himself in the desert with coffee liquid. Later, coffee became the rational stimulant in 18th century European countries by replacing alcohol, and it triggered many of revolutions. Finally, coffee also became the work catalyst in contemporary society, which makes us more efficient and passive in labor. Then I focused on the global history of cafe and their special figures. There is one of the first coffee houses in the world called Kabehane, with wide platform seats which could allow not only the coffee drinking, but also various activities. In 17th century, the Cafe Florian appeared in the arcade shopping mall with the gigantic colonnades. People used this semi-indoor space for their coffee drinking spaces. The Cafe Padrich was consisted of large coffee spaces in the ground floor and various thematic enclosures in its second floor for many Italian bourgeois. Finally, the first Korean coffee space appeared in the Emperor Palace in 1900, which is called Jeongganhwan. This semi-open space for king was consisted of columns, roof, curtain, and platform. In contemporary Korean society, misuses of coffee and cafe are rapidly getting pervasive in anywhere in the city, and it became a work, leisure, or whatever space. We can also see the permeability of cafe that they rapidly have been mutated with the pre-existing building types in Seoul, and how they maintain or disrupt the status quo of the region, such as cram school, Hagwon in Seoul. Many chain cafes became began to invade cram school's ground floor by matching the demands of students who want more supplementary study spaces. Since teenagers can study in cram school after 10 p.m. legally, there was an emergence of the new type of space called study cafe. Likewise, the mutations of cafe also emerged in the financial district of Seoul, Yeouido. First, the lobby of the most buildings was transformed to many chain cafes. Later, a new cafe called Healing Cafe has been created, a space where people can take a nap and rest for overworked office workers. Also, unlike many historical cafes, the contemporary cafe in Seoul became more like a space of collective negotiation of different forms of lifestyles. So in this context, I categorize these diverse cafes in Seoul into 4 different categories, which is political, productive, hedonistic, and nihilistic. For the political cafes, left is a cafe in Korean church. It is frequently used as a space for evangelizing for new congregations. And the other one is the cafe in Eunhae Community House, which utilized the cafe to unite the different families in co-housing project. Next category is the cafe for productive activities. So there are 24 hours cafe, study cafe, and co-working cafe respectively. Next is hedonistic cafes, which enable people to escape from their work and have fun. So these 2 cafes show the meerkat and fish spaces in their center of the open plan. The left one is a cafe for reading comic book with the individual rooms, and the right is the fishing cafe with the virtual screen. Finally, cafe of nihilism, or the cafe of meaninglessness. So here's the Smash Cafe where people can purchase stuff and smash them freely. Lastly, Stair to Nowhere Cafe. It shows that the cafe even employed the meaningless architectural element in their space, such like door and staircase, but face to nowhere. As a conclusion of my research, in our contemporary world, especially in Seoul, the cafe becomes a space of collective negotiation of different forms of lifestyles or status quos than a coffee drinking space, which can freely take any architectural form even without coffee. So the coffee, such an agent or index of openness to shift and change what happens when combined with platforms and stages, with columns, roof, and enclosures, etc. Ultimately, even though the coffee is taken away, the stages are still there, and thus we realize that there will always be changes. So go back to my project, Cafe Seoul. There were 2 main points that triggered my project. First, the site of the project Seoul has a unique status quo that many people appropriate urban infrastructure such as under bridges, parks, platforms to use and stay. Second, as my research proves, the cafes in Seoul are usually at the forefront of urban changes by reflecting many of emerging status quos in Seoul, and it has a potential to open up any special experiment in any pre-existing context of Seoul. Thus, I decided to propose a giant space as a cafe on one of the Seoul's mountain with the stages of the platform that architecture creates, and coffee the agent of chaos and change, but it even disappeared in some point. So ultimately, it aims to encourage various forms of lifestyles and appropriations of the space in return for paying a cup of coffee or even just passing through the cafe archetype for free. At the beginning, to open up the appropriable stages by utilizing the cafe in my project, I extracted the fundamental archetype of cafe, which is the identical architecture gesture inherited in most of cafe. So I formulated them like entering, preparing, picking, occupying, because I thought this recognizable gesture can authorize the users to take the ownership of something with a cup of coffee, and they can potentially imply anything which is more than a cup of coffee. Also, this whole possibility could be camouflaged as the generic cafe apparatus, which are extremely intimate to us. So I tried to collect some utilities or architectural elements such as stair, columns, etc. from my cafe research, which can be taken after you buy a cup of coffee in cafe. Then I experimented with these elements to specialize them in various ways, but only maintain the similar architecture gesture in the same sequence. And I move on to the more micro scale and play with architecture elements such as walls, columns, something that we can appropriate from precedent cafes. Therefore, I try to use these finite architecture elements to open up the finite spaces that makes the space more appropriable. So for the first design, I captured the one-off mountain in Seoul, which is called Isu Park, as a void by enclosing staircase cafes which navigate people to the central void through the archetypal sequence with coffee. And this coffee as an agent not only gives such an ownership of coffee drinking space to users, but also initiate people to use them in different ways. But at the end, even the coffee somehow disappears from this place, leaving only highly defined but unprescribed void with finite architecture elements. And I believe that designating this nihilistic end in Seoul could create feasible heterotopia where people can appropriate the space endlessly. So for the cafe archetype part, I picked one of the mountain's boundary with some domestic buildings and modified the pre-existing domestic buildings ground floor into cafes and turned their ground into the beginning point of the stairs. Then I deployed the coffee archetypal sequence, ordering, preparing, picking, occupying. And finally, on the staircase, I put some final architectural archetypes, such as canopies, columns, and curtain that I borrowed from the historical cafes. So you can see the ongoing staircase redefine the parallel domestic spaces, and the semi-exterior stairs in various scales provide many possibilities for different activities such as sitting, lying, etc. After they pass through and get out of this canopy area, they arrive at the forest. Thus, as you can see in the drawing, the pre-existing buildings at the edge are modified and settled on the ongoing staircase, and cafe archetypes are deployed sequentially with the ongoing steps, and all these stairs head towards the deep forest which is behind the coffee bean and curtain. Lastly, all the staircase leads people to the nowhere space at the center of the mountain. I abstracted some historical cafe archetypes from some historical cafes, such as Korean Emperor Cafe Jeongganon and European Revolutionary cafes in my research, which had very specific functions and protocols on each form. But I hollowed all these functions out, even including the coffee, and just kept the empty shell of the historical mechanism of the power. For the last design, I even more tried to design a hollowed architecture as a cafe. So I decided to imply everything just as one simple giant staircase and make sharp defined boundary, yet smoothly connected to the urban context and landscape. Learning from the staircase nowhere cafe, the idea of the project is reappropriate the staircase as an architectural element. Basically, staircase is functional, that they are meant to get you from point A to point B. They're meant to permit a specific goal of the movement. But in my case, I'm taking the staircase, but removing its destination and function. So paradoxically, the end or the destination of this stair, which is nowhere, is still inheriting its form because it's still a staircase. But I simply just transformed it through scaling up to enable people to stay, use, and linger. Then place it in this context of Seoul, a city that is always going towards endless goals. To explain more about the design, I kept the entrance with the ongoing staircase with cafe archetypes, which penetrates the pre-existing buildings like the previous design. So here's the entrance of the cafe Seoul, which subtly mutates with super familiar domestic context of Seoul. And the ground floor of the pre-existing domestic buildings are hollowed out and filled with cafe on the staircase. And the columns with sharp rectangular roof mark the beginning of the cafe Seoul. Then people can walk through the buildings with coffee archetypes by stairs and arrive at the large platform staircase. And before the curtain frontier, the stairs with various temples provide semi-indoor cafe environment to users. More specifically, I subtly differentiated the material and suggest the different usage of steps, which for circulation and inhabitation by paving glossy and smooth stone surface between the passageway steps. So coffee exists as the initiator or the index, and it initiate many of different activities. Also, 50 centimeter width of stair with table and electric socket supports many cafe activities, and 5 to 6 meter height of the flat roof provides nice shelter without any behavioral restriction. At the mid spot of the cafe Seoul, where people arrive, is more like the large and wide stages than the staircase. And these stages link to the flat carved landscape at both sides. So architecture of the cafe Seoul defines clear boundary between cafe and forest, yet these two grounds meet super softly together, so that cafe Seoul is not just restricted under this huge roof with platform, and people can freely get out of this shadow of architecture whenever they want. So both wide and flat stages support more various forms of lifestyles, such as camping in habitation or any collective status schools. Finally, the last platform of Cafe So ends nowhere, a place where destination and direction disappear. So, good night, everyone. Cafe So ultimately guides people to the space with no coffee, no direction, and no function. It hands the possibility over to people just by providing the people with architecture in the share of a cafe without any meaning, even coffee. So to sum up my project for So, a city that is always going towards endless goals, I designed a huge staircase as a cafe, which provides series of stages to the city, not only on the hardscape of the stair, but also on the landscape. Ultimately, Cafe So challenged to provide architecture to turn people of So become architects themselves by using finite architecture form, which allows people to endlessly appropriate So as a cafe at the end of the city. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Jun-sung. I'm glad that you didn't forget how to present over a few months of break. Fantastic. Okay. Any questions? Anything to discuss over the project from anyone?
Oh, you can also ask question in Korean. I'm good at
Oh,
Korean.
yes. Jun-sung is the only Korean student that we've invited, so let's take the opportunity.
Well, hello, Shin-sung.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Sorry, I don't speak Korean, but
It's fine. No
very
problem.
sorry. And well, nice to see you again after 1 year of online learning. And yeah, congratulations on your great work. I'm really impressive. So, well, actually, I'm not sure whether you are thinking anything about this, but the like your staircases to nowhere and those large scale staircases kind of reminds me of those Japanese temples. Like you may know that there will be some, those temples will be on the hilltop, and then there will be very long cases in front of it. And I'm wondering whether there will be some kind of like religion meaning or like your own challenge to that in this kind of deconstruction of meaning, like make it to nowhere. I'm not sure it's a clear question, but yeah, I want to know your opinion.
Okay. So the fun thing in this project is I call this is like staircase to nowhere, but actually that nowhere space is already established as the space. So it's actually not the absolute nowhere space, but how I believe like how I thought about like how this kind of space can work in Seoul, and the solution that I got is maybe even rather just really using finite architectural elements that which had really specific function and protocols, but just hollow out all these functions out and just leave it to the users. So maybe I believe that that kind of defined nowhere space, established nowhere space, but hollowed out prescribed function can be actually visible nowhere space in Seoul. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope that this is the right answer.
I think it was a great question also, because I don't know, Jun-sung, whether you would agree to this to a degree, but it has a very distinctive form, like, and actually you chose the very recognizable form to be at the center of like a nihilistic idea. So, but it's like a constant struggle in between like very two different like conceptions, right? Like one is that you're letting go of like any kind of form, but then at the same time, in order to activate it, or to give some kind of axiality, like the whether that's material or immaterial, like it had to kind of exist as figurative, recognizable form. Otherwise, people just won't know like where to pivot from. So I think that kind of like paradoxical ideas, which are existing in like materialized form, is also very interesting thing to witness in the project. So I think Ningwei's question is actually really valuable. But obviously the religion part and the non-religion part, basically like religion as a belief, and like if you kind of give up on the faith, like what can we bring into it? Like is it the new faith that people can actually construct themselves? That's also very interesting discourse. So yeah, I mean, fantastic. I don't know. I mean, this is just my interpretation of your project. So if you if you disagree or want to say something, then of course.
No, I agree. Thanks.
Thank you both. It's really clear. Thank you.
I mean, I always hated tutors to intervene in the discussion, but I'm turning into one myself, so that's kind of gross. No. But yeah, anyone else who would like to have an open? Yeah, Minji, let's go.
한국어로 질문 드릴게요.
네, 됩니다.
일단은 발표 정말 너무너무 재밌게 잘 들었고, 제가 궁금한 거는 AA는 제임스한테 들어서도 좀 알고 있지만 그 설계 프로젝트를 진행하는 기간이 굉장히 길다고 들었어요. 근데 저희 학교 같은 경우에는 많게는 한 학기에 2가지 프로젝트를 진행할 때도 있고 해서 설계에 들어가기 전에 그런 사전 작업 단계가 굉장히 짧은 편인데 보통 이렇게 큰 프로젝트를 할 때 어느 정도의 그런 사전 조사 작업 기간을 거치시는지 좀 궁금해요.
네. 먼저 9개월이고 3개월로 된 한 학기로 이제 총 3학기가 되어 있는 학년인데요. 그래서 첫 번째 학기는 먼저 리서치를 하는 데 있어서 매진을 하고, 두 번째 학기에서는 이제 그 리서치를 토대로 어떻게 디자인 컨셉이나 이런 식으로 그 프로젝트를 세워 나갈지에 대해서 생각하고, 세 번째는 이제 두 번째에서 거의 디자인을 끝마친 상태에서 세 번째에서 이제 디자인을 더 잘 정교하게 끝내는 동시에 이제 비주얼리제이션을 같이 진행하는 식으로 되게 그런 식으로 갔던 것 같습니다.
그리고 이건 그냥 조금 1차원적인 질문이기는 한데 이런 렌더 이미지들은 어떤 프로그램을 주로 사용하세요?
렌더 이미지 같은 경우에는 약간 이런 것들 말씀하시는 건가요?
네.
10%는 라이노로 그냥 make to zero 해서 라인만 따놓고 90%는 포토샵으로 떼었습니다. 네.
감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다.
I mean, just to recap on what's been discussed in English for those who don't speak Korean, Minji was asking about the structure of the year, and how much is been spent on the research and design. I mean, in our unit, we kind of dedicate, and Junsung answered in this way, that we dedicate one term, first term on the research, second term on the design, third on the sharpening the argument and also the graphics. And the second question was oriented towards the tools that's been used to creating this kind of image. And Junsung said Photoshop. He photoshopped everything.
Thank you for
I didn't
the
know.
translation.
It's good
Oh,
to
no.
find out. Anyone else? 다른 분들도 질문 있나요?
혹시 이렇게 다시 보고 다시 발표하고 좀 시간이 지났으니까 혹시 개인적으로 생각하셨을 때 더 뭔가 하고 싶다던가 발전시키고 싶으신 아쉬우신 부분 혹시 있으실까요?
아무래도 디자인을 더 그러니까 상당히 이제 theoretical한 거에 많이 집중했던 프로젝트이지만 결국에는 어떤 서울에 필요한 헤테로토피아를 만들고 싶다는 생각에서 디자인이 시작을 했는데 이게 정말로 감각적으로 그냥 그 로직 같은 게 없이 저가 순수하게 이 공간에 있을 때 그 제가 원하던 그 감각의 헤테로토피아에 가까울까라는 것에 대해서는 아직 저도 확실하게 확언을 할 수 없거든요. 그래서 조금 더 여기는 되게 막 abstract된 그런 아키텍처 폼들만 최대한 차용을 한 상태인데 그 부분에 대해서 조금 더 디벨롭을 시간이 있었다면 할 수 있지 않았을까에 대한 생각이 있습니다.
So the question was whether there was any room for improvements in the project when Junsung revisited, and Junsung's response was it started off having heterotopic ideals and whether it's possible to enable that in context of Seoul, and he is still unsure whether the design resolution is actually achieving. I feel like I'm becoming a Sharon Choi. God, I'm sorry if I'm misinterpreting.
No, I love your translation. Thank you, James.
Anyone else? 다른 분들도 질문 있으신가요? 없으면은 아마 다음 프레젠터로 넘어가겠습니다. Thank you very much, Insung.
Yeah,
really...
thank you for inviting me, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. So maybe I could give a brief intro of the next student. Yanning, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hey, Yanning. Well, are
Okay,
you? Oh,
James.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, it's June here. Yeah. Sorry that I forgot to start recording this lecture. So if you don't mind, if the students don't mind, can I start recording?
Oh, but it's only Yanning who's left. Yeah. So
that's okay. I think it's just as a record, maybe.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I thought it was being recorded because I've informed all students that it will be recorded.
I wasn't on at the beginning of this, and then I didn't want to interrupt. So yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know.
And most of our unit student is working now, and they thought it's gonna be recorded and then uploaded. So.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Ning, did you have a chance to record this?
Yeah. Okay. I have a backup recording from the beginning.
All right, that's good.
Fantastic.
Good. Thank
you,
you.
Ning.
Thank God. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, Yanning, thank you so much for joining us.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah.
No
Sorry,
problem. Yeah, sure.
where are you? Are you at work at the moment?
Yeah, I'm at home actually since I'm sick today. So
Oh my
I got a
God.
sick leave.
Are you okay to present?
I think so, but the voice maybe, yeah. But I hope you can hear clearly, but maybe yeah, it doesn't sound very well.
Oh God. Okay. Well, I mean, thank you so much. God. You should have told me.
It's
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're ready, Annie, why don't you give a short intro of yourself before you start, and then then
Sure.
you can present.
Yeah. So hello everyone, I'm Yanling. I was like second year student at Unit 6 this year. Before I joined AA, I actually working at Adobe at Silicon Valley for a couple of years. When I was working there, like all tech companies they actually treated me very well. Like they provided all the perks and amenities to make sure you contribute all your intelligence into the work. But I start to question, is it their dream company actually my dream company? So in response to this situation, I did my project about like researching Silicon Valley and like the situation. So I'm gonna to present my this year project. It's called Divine Factory. So I'm going to start. The project is called Divine Factory. It research. Let me minimize this one. So it researches Google, Burning Man, and California missions about how they optimize their spaces for boosting productivity and creativity. Then released these instrumentalized architectural mechanisms we witnessed in the case studies into the city to turn the city inside out and open it up for over 5 million Silicon Valley residents with more living possibilities and enable a burning festival inside the city. The research starts at Silicon Valley, a place I used to work at. It is also the hub of technological innovations. Besides the large number of tech employees behind this powerful engine, service workers also fuel the companies. Melissa is one of the hundreds of thousands service workers working at Silicon Valley. She's a janitor working at Google. Her daily job is cleaning the campus. Campus become her daily central point and spending 8 hours there every day. She can enjoy free meals and snacks. But some other amenities like massage rooms, daycare centers are only for technical employees. When she walked in the campus lobby, she always noticed that 2 dozen unframed photographs are posted on the plain white walls. In the photos, giant sculptures set out in a flat white desert and our fireworks exploding over the head of a giant neon stick figure. She heard it called Burning Man, but she never had a chance being there, since she can't afford high commute expense for getting into the Nevada desert, not to mention the cost of entry ticket. But recently, she heard a burning festival gonna come into the city and it will be free and open to everyone. So she decided to join. Tech employees will parade effigies of themselves from San Jose to San Francisco along 50-mile El Camino Rail, then burn them at San Francisco Ocean Beach. The effigies are tech employees from Silicon Valley wearing their factories. Melissa was chosen as one of the figures behind the costume. The parade starts at San Jose SAP Center. Along the way, they used the city fabric as temporary houses. At the first night, they will rest at Palo Alto, where more open spaces are available. The second day, they will stay at San Francisco, where they turned Market Street into a giant house. The effigies will be burned down at the end of festival on San Francisco Ocean Beach. Day 1. The first day, they moved the effigies from San Jose to Palo Alto and stay at Park House, where more open spaces like parking lots, groves, and stadiums are available. In the research cases, Burning Man and Google, both plans have a cross go through the center with grid patterns underlining. The rigid grids feel invisible for people inside the site, but allow them easily navigate in large scale. Facilities are distributed evenly among the sites for easily navigating and time-saving purposes. Park House uses similar strategy to turn the open spaces into giant dining room and bedroom. The parking lots of the shopping center will be converted into a cooking and dining area. Using the origin pattern of the parking lots, we pick spots for setting up cooking facilities. They can be used as outdoor cooking for both normal time and the festival. During the festival, temporary tables will be set up along the parking lots, with effigies set up in the central parking space. Burning Man radically allows people to conjure up entire worlds out of nothing. SimCam placement launched in Burning Man in 1995, that each group can configure it to deliver a strong team and community feeling. Burners engage in making art and inventing new ways of living. Individuals begin to see and feel the manufacturing potential of collective common-based labor. The potential power for creative production behind Burning Man was soon recognized by tech companies at the Bay Area and borrowed into Google new campus design. The working space is a set of platforms where different teams can arrange their desks, share tables, discussion spots on their own. Collaborations and communications are encouraged in these settings for ideas flow. Similar to those two cases, the center spaces of parking lots allow participants to reconfigure into different uses, like performance stage, artwork construction sites, or garbage collection spots. Effigies placed in the center of the parking space with dining tables set around. Cooking and cleaning stations are set on the further part of the parking lines. People prepare food, cook meals, and wash dishes at those places. The group next to the parking lots is turned into a giant bedroom. Marked area with central-oriented pattern, then remove the trees which blocks the roads. Evenly distributed water systems which can be turned into shower stations during the festival. Fill in inflatable cushions as sleeping bags, leave the holes for trees. During the festival, interconnectable inflatable cushions are added to the site and form a giant bed for both people and effigies sleep there. People can climb on effigies to sleep and play. The paths that point to the center allow them easily navigate in the area. Shower facilities are set next to the bed. Day 2. On the second day, they parade from Palo Alto to San Francisco City and use the Market Street as their temporary house. Market Street begins at the Ferry Building and runs through most of downtown San Francisco. In these 3 research cases, Google, California Missions, and Burning Man, people are doing all kinds of activities under the same roof. The new Google campus is set under one roof with all the facilities, working zones, gardens, cafes, gyms, and event rooms. Its employees can work, eat, rest, and do all kinds of social activities under the canopy. It tears down boundaries between work and play to boost creativity, productivity, and employee satisfaction. The campus is no longer a single functional workspace, but a cosmos for living and working. This methodology can be traced back to California missions during colonial period 200 years ago at the same area, where Native Americans are brought into mission campuses to work and live. All kinds of stores, workshops are available inside compound and all under the same long roof. Native Americans live, study, and work under the roof. At Burning Man, a 70-meter wide central camp is set at the center as a major gathering point. Participants can configure it into diverse ways of usage, like cinema, dancing stage, yoga place, and the dining area. The festival also gonna hold under a roof. A flat mirror roof is designed along the Market Street, starting nearby the Civic Center, and mainly covered the street, sometimes extended to the nearby open spaces, and end up approaching the South Beach zone. Besides the mirror roof, couple steps are added along the pedestrian streets to provide utilities and encourage more street life along the Market Street. Roofs are covered the majority of the road and leave gaps between buildings, allowing sunlight getting in. During the festival, burners parade effigies along the street. The pedestrian streets are used as spectator zone. People can watch the whole parade reflection on the mirror roof. In the evening, the cushions are brought to the street and turn it into a house, allowing people cooking, dining, and sleeping under the mirror roof. The mirror roof reflected the street life, and the steps along the pedestrian streets can function as tables and chairs for cooking and dining with electronic utility provided. Day 3. The third day, they moved from Market Street to the Ocean Beach. It is a 3.5-mile-long beach on the west coast of San Francisco, adjacent to Golden Gate Park, bordering the Pacific Ocean. At Google Charleston East, in order to make connections between different teams, the platforms are set up with different heights, allowing visual connection. Burning Man also used high artworks as navigation marks on desert. to modify the topology of the ocean beach, leaving the beach with higher and lower differences, allowing participants to view the burning event under certain safety guidance. Concrete steps are added. Concrete steps are merged along the total lines of the beach. During the festival, they parade effigies to this destination and set them in the center. The beach becomes a large theater, allowing people viewing the burning event. The circles are added along the step lines, using as activity platforms and facility stations along the border. Burning effigies are normally categorized into 3 ways: burning political effigy as a kind of protest, burning traditional effigy to welcome the new year or seasonal transition, burning funeral effigy to memorial the death. So let's burn. At the last night of the festival, they burn down the effigies, burn down the factories that capturing them, burn down old stuff for radical expression, and welcome a new one. Audience watched the burning on the stairs while holding events at the semi-sphere platforms, or use the facilities at the edge to shower or charge devices. After the festival, Melissa can still return to this site during normal time. Using the cooking facilities at parking lots, setting up tables at those parking spaces, and enjoying an outdoor gathering with family and friends, the kitchen is optimized for collaborated cooking, where they share the cookwares and the ingredients. They can prepare food at preparation part, then move to the cooking zone, or doing some outdoor activities at the group next to the parking lot, watching their kids playing football and then taking a shower at either individual or group shower rooms, or even washing and airing clothes there. Working along the market street, taking a post-shopping rest at those stair blocks, lying there, reading the newspapers, charging the phones, having meals, or even bring out school or office work. Under the mirror roof, the street becomes a shared living room. Coming to the ocean beach, the semi-sphere platforms are turned into playground and relaxation places for setting up chairs and beach towers. To recap the project, it researches 3 production sites, Google, Burning Man, and California Mission, about how they optimize their spaces for encouraging productivity and creativity. These architectural mechanisms, together with the creativity, got captured inside the campuses under colonial or cooperational power. The project released these instrumentalized architectural mechanisms out of their containers and put them back into Bay Area and San Francisco City, and transferred them into a series of long-term city infrastructures to enable a 3-day burning festival, where they parade effigies from San Jose to San Francisco. Along the way, the city will be misused and turned into a series of houses where the burners can eat, rest, play, and sleep there. At the same time, these long-term infrastructures turn the whole city inside out and open up the city itself to everyday use for 5 million Silicon Valley residents. The city becomes a laboratory for experimenting living possibilities in different scales. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you. Yeah.
That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much again, Yanni. I mean,
I hope
so,
voice is okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really sorry again that, yeah, if I knew, then we would have organized a different day or something. But yeah, thanks again, much appreciated. Yeah, and congratulations on the winning all the awards with this project. That's like, yeah, that's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, James. Yeah, without your effort, I won't be able to go like this far.
Oh no, come on. I think it's all you really. Yeah, I mean, the students who presented today, I mean, of course there are second year students and they're presenting second year works, but then I personally think they've gone way beyond the level. And also, I mean, you know, it's very much comparable to the diploma projects at the AA, I would say. And it's also like, you know, I mean, I would argue that it could be much more appreciated if we kind of don't, you know, judge by the years of the work, I think. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I've invited all these students who have great work, like regardless of which year they are in. And yeah, thanks again. And maybe this is a good time to discuss over the work. And it's a super dense project and very contemporary, very relevant. But because of the contemporariness of the project and typology that's very hard to recognize, because they're all very dissolved and like soft, and in many cases exploded also to a degree. So I think it's not an easy project to understand in first round. So if anyone has questions to be clarified, Yanling can explain. And she has the first-hand experience of the the city and the corporation. So yeah, it will be a really great moment to ask any questions.
Hello, Yanling.
Hi, Wei.
Great to see you again. Yeah, really impressive, and it's great to have you talking thoroughly about your project. And I just want to ask, because I found it interesting, because the whole project starts with a third-person perspective story, and I found, well, I personally think there is a kind of strong sense of metaphor behind this narrative. Well, maybe I'm just horribly wrong, but I will say what I'm thinking. So, and also I found there might be more, metaphoric elements in this project, like the Burning Man in suit and tie, like a carnival happening in Silicon Valley. And I just want to maybe ask if there, your thinking about what's behind this metaphoric story, and why you decided to move that carnival in the desert to that specific, maybe near those high-tech companies.
Yeah, I think I will start with like since you mentioned it's like a third-person perspective story. It actually starts from a service worker working at Silicon Valley. Like since even if critique about like inside Silicon Valley, like working there as a technical employees, like they set up all the amenities to boost your creativity. But there is also a large number of service workers like in the companies or even in the city, and since they kind of like raised the living expenses in the city, so when you are there you won't be ignore their living situations actually. So that will be like a huge part of the, well, it's another side of problem, but it's really a huge part of problem like inside Silicon Valley currently. So kind of like start there. And also like the Burning Man, it starts with the local residents, like Bohemian cultures, like they just, it's like an underground gathering for them to celebrate their their culture. But then it got recognized by tech companies also and turned into like a like a team building event for all the tech employees, and the price of getting there become like higher and higher each year. And it's no longer like the reason how how Bohemian culture, they collaborate together and they create artworks together, kind of like those spirit got captured inside inside part of the corporational power also. So that's the conflict kind of like I'm interested in seeing. It should be reachable to everyone inside the city, but it no longer. So that's kind of the reason I actually try to bring up this one into the city, and needs actually to provoke the city itself to think about, what the creativity can do, not only just in service the tech production, but also, inside for living and for other possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And also, well, that's just my thinking after you answer this, because I found there's a kind of strong contrast between the local, let's say those service workers or those low-income group, and versus the high-profits company. and especially those high-tech companies. And I feel like it's kind of the same story happening in great cities. And the locals are kind of excelled, and then those great company occupy the city center. So, and yeah, maybe those high-tech company also create their own rabbit hole and trap themselves there. Yeah, that's just my own thinking. Yeah, thank you. But,
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your answer.
Anyone else?
Yeah, thanks for amazing work. And it's not a question. I was really wondering about the images that I saw it from James. James already showed me like few images of your project. I was like really curious about. I had no idea like how it works. It was just seems like some theater or like plays are going on the street or something like that, and it's really small gesture of architecture. Everything is like really slight structures and like making whole these stories, and all the system is really amazing. I was really impressed, and I was thanks for the presentation, all the things.
Thank you. So it makes you clear, like knowing how they works. Yeah, I only like add infrastructures into the city. Like I didn't do like large architectural stuff, but I hope those like infrastructure is really something, you know, part of the things like the city really needed.
I mean, I think this is kind of opening up a discussion of like the unit's hidden agenda in a way but which kind of branched out because of all these great students like Cheryl Junsung and Yanli. I mean we always get inspired by students also, and expand our brief for the next year. And I think the direction that we kind of took away from the student was actually possibility of using infrastructure as architecture, or house as infrastructure, and these kind of really subtle exchangeable interplay between like a nature, architecture, infrastructure. So I think, yeah, I mean it's great that it expanded, because infrastructure already is subsumed by structure, right? Structure of the society to operate. And like, if we kind of disobey that fit purpose and turn that into some kind of living space that's already available for us, what kind of possibilities would emerge? It's a super interesting question. I think Yanling's gestures were very subtle, like almost nothing, but it has a super great impact. But yeah, but by just changing the conception of it. So yeah, I think it's a great work. So thanks again. And I don't know, like it comes across as a really obvious thing, but at the same time, you're directly like relating your projects to religion. Whether you're completely countering it, or you're like profaning it and reinterpreting it, and even the format of the presentation of like a day one, this happens, day two, and like what's the, I mean, would you be able to elaborate further on the idea behind the religion and these tech companies, maybe?
Yeah, like as I studied, like even the Burning Man is a bit like religional, and also I link to the mission is really, it's just is their purpose is doing the the evangelist like to the Native Americans. The reason start here is also it's like kind of contemporary, you know, the situation like tech companies, they no longer when they, you know, when they kind of like marketing or they try to let you work for them, it's not you are, you know, you are what they reward you something, or they kind of like keep saying you are going to change the world. You know, if you join them, you purpose of life, or you like you make a world a better world. It's like the famous slogan from Steve Jobs. So that's really the thing. And also it's another trap, like similar to, you know, how Silicon Valley actually get, you know, especially the young graduate, like to get to work for them, is they hope that's the purpose of your life. They hope they set up a goal for you, like you really service it, you contribute to creativity, not just for like getting reward of like consumption, but also in, you know, mentally in some way. So that's also the situation, like I realized and I noticed. So I kind of like go deeper and to dig into how they use their architectural spaces in this way, and how it related to the actually like regional places like missions and Burning Man. So yeah, that's the that's the point behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like deep in that manner, because, you know, I honestly, like, it's hard to draw a line, like, for me about this like belief. But we can easily draw a line for institutions that's profiteering from the belief system that they can manipulate or construct or enhance. You know, I think that's something that you are definitely critiquing. I think like even Catholicism, you know, was like, it exists in forms like pre-institutionalized states to the institutionalized state, and then like, you know, after the post-institutionalized states, all of our behaviors were like modified and trained, and, you know, to enhance this kind of, you know, belief system, whether it is for the belief or you know, for some other purposes. I think that's something that we have to be all really cautious of. That's why the idea, any form of, you know, idealization, process of idealization, and the agency who supports this kind of idealization process, and we as architects are part of this, you know, at the center of the agency in constructing the space. So I think if we aren't aware of these things, I think we only end up reproducing the very similar values. So I think that's something that we all have to be very careful. And yeah, and also rethink about this kind of ownership. You know, I think Yanning is like extracting it out from the privatized institution of their technique to like boost their productivity and the creative production, but kind of, you know, taking that out and then making it available to the public. And then like what happens, what kind of possibility that could actually emerge by doing that is also, you know, very clear in the presentation, and it's super exciting to imagine that. So yeah, I mean, I highly appreciate the project, and thanks again for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, thanks Ningwei for recording. Otherwise, if it wasn't for you, I think a lot of students would have missed the opportunity to recap on it. So thank you. And yeah, thanks for you know, June and her team, Visiting School Seoul, for making this event public, so we can share like exciting thoughts that comes up from the AA to other students.
You're very welcome. It was it was good to see the students work actually at this stage. Yeah. And then, well, I think I have a long conversation that's coming probably with the James about the about the teachings and all these pedagogical issues. That's great. Yeah, amazing work. Congratulations to all of you.
Great. thank you guys for making your time to the presentation. And Unit 1, we will return to our normal Zoom to continue the reading seminar and the optional tutorials. Okay, see you there. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.